Welcome back to Wide World of News. I'm Mark Halperin. We're going to talk today about Delaware, the first state. His favorite son, Joe Biden, is running for president again. This time he secured the Democratic nomination. We're going to talk today about Delaware and Joe Biden with Doug Rainey. He's been a journalist in Delaware for about 30 years, and he joins us now from Delaware. Doug, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be here.
When I covered Bill Clinton when he ran for president from Arkansas, George Bush from Texas, a lot of enthusiasm in the state. Not everybody was for them, but people talked about it a lot. Are Delawareans talking a lot about Joe Biden running for president now?
As you noted, he's run a few times. We know him very well. I think it's hard to calculate the enthusiasm given the COVID-19 situation, but clearly there's a love of Joe Biden that crosses party lines.
He's got what I like to call the second most famous baseman in the world after Norman Bates. He's obviously been largely in the state. He's gone to Pennsylvania and he went to Texas once. But how are people dealing with the fact that Joe Biden is such a presence and yet not a presence in Delaware now?
We've probably not spent a whole lot of time thinking about it because we've had the same issues that all other states have, where we were under a stay-at-home order as he was, and he faded into the background like he did until the South Carolina primary.
Delaware is, by population, one of the smallest states. I think it's 45th in population. About 1 million people live there. Whenever I've been in Delaware with Joe Biden, pretty much everyone either called him Joe or referred to him by Joe. Is that your experience, and how is he thought of by people in the state generally?
I think it's a mixture. I cover the business community, so there's a little more unease about him. But yes, most people have an opinion about Joe, and in general, they like him personally, unless they had some exchange of views. A friend of mine had an exchange of views with him on the Amtrak trip to Washington, D.C. one time. So it isn't entirely we love Joe. But we know him. We know who he is. We know his heart, as they say.
And am I right that most people call him Joe or refer to him as Joe?
Yeah, no one says senator, vice president, all
Right.
those things.
Yeah. Now, do you think that's a product of it being a small state or a product of his style as a politician and as a person?
I think it's both. I mean, obviously we know his style of doing things. It was always a kind of a standing joke among the media in Delaware that he would always show up late for everything. And one of my memories was they were doing a dedication ceremony, and he literally ran out of a his Jeep Gladiator to get to the stand because he knew that he was pretty late. So we kind of know who he is. We know his style and his strengths and weaknesses, and people accept it.
Obviously, vice president for 8 years, and he was frequently back in the state. Do you expect any big changes in Delaware if he is elected president, or it's not going to be much different, do you think?
I think you'll see some changes. He actually lived about 7 miles from the airport. So there's a route, it's called Route 141, and the state police, the Secret Service, they just had their way of doing it when his airplane, when his jet landed at the airport. It was a very low key four or five cars, and whisked him in, whisked him out, and we really didn't know. We didn't really know he was around. There wasn't much. I mean, it was very smooth. Obviously, he was vice president. Everything would be amped up considerably.
No doubt.
And I probably should note that he has a house in Rehoboth Beach now. Right. So I would guess that might become the summer White House or something, if that comes to pass.
As Doug said, he's been a business journalist for most of the recent part of his career. He's the editor of the Delaware Business Now. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how the state is faring in dealing with all the crises we're dealing with. First, in terms of the economy, how is Delaware dealing with the fallout from the pandemic and from the state shutting down?
Well, we really don't know right now. We did come up with a 15.8% unemployment rate, I believe, for May, which was one of the higher ones in the nation. But like Pennsylvania, we really don't know what the true extent of the situation is. It's clear we were close to New Jersey. We were 120 miles from the epicenter of the epidemic. The governor, like most Northeast governors and Mid-Atlantic governors, came up with pretty strict stay-at-home orders. Those obviously had an impact on the economy. We're now moving into what they call phase 2. But really, the economic damage is hard to calculate. It seemed to fall on fast-growing businesses like restaurants and hotels. So we had 30,000 layoffs in the hospitality industry. So in a state of 970,000, that's a lot.
I know the University of Delaware this week announced a pretty robust and aggressive reopening plan for the fall. Some online courses, but some brick and mortar courses. What is your sense of the status, not just of higher ed, but of K through 12 as well in terms of the fall?
It's still not very clear as to what the path forward is. You're right. University of Delaware seemed to be pretty bold in what it had wanted to do. That's partly because it's what is now considered to be a little Ivy. It's considered to be an alternative to go into Cornell or Yale or something if your parents don't have quite as much money or want to borrow as much money. So I think they want people to have that. They want the students to have the on-campus experience. Is it too early? If things like testing and putting people into a dorm, how's that going to look? What's that going to look like? I think there's still a lot of questions, even within the University of Delaware. But the announcement did show what they hope to see in September.
Right. And then finally, Doug, in terms of race relations, how has Delaware's experience been in terms of protests, in terms of any violence in the state in reaction to the unrest that's occurred and the protests around the country?
It's been a mixed bag. We did have an incident. We had an incident on Market Street, which is a main street in Wilmington, and we had some looting and some arrests and other things. It really illustrated the racial tensions in the state. It seemed to bring the white suburban population out in terms of their latent racism. They were much more concerned about the looting on Market Street than they were about other issues of racial justice. So Delaware, like most border states, has a very mixed history on race relations. This was the state that in 1968 had the National Guard occupy Wilmington for close to a year. So there's a lot of work to do.
Last, I just want to return to Joe Biden, and again, I know you can't speak for all 1 million people who live there, but is your sense that the general sense in the state is that Joe Biden's going to win, or that Joe Biden's going to lose, or people don't know?
I think it's a fluid situation, and whoever thought Donald Trump would win. So I think the pollsters and pundits and everybody they're all putting an asterisk in front of their predictions. You know, we're sitting next to Pennsylvania, so I think we're going to be closely watching what that situation is. I think that race is actually closer than some of the other battleground states. So I think that's what I think. Cautious optimism would probably be the two words I'd use.
Yeah, I agree with you about that, and I agree with you about Pennsylvania as well. I think it's closer than some people are currently considering. Doug Rainey, he's the editor and chief content officer of Delaware Business Now. Doug, thanks for making time to talk to us.
I enjoyed talking with you.
I'm Mark Halperin. We'll see you again back here very soon on Wide World of News.